Is it okay for protesters to be masked if ICE agents are masked? Is it?
Is it okay for protesters to be
Yeah.
masked? If they want to wear a mask, it's fine, but why are we complaining about the police? That's my point.
Well, we're complaining about them being masked.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Grab a seat and get comfortable, because this one heats up fast. Today we're dropping into a CNN NewsNight panel, where Abby Phillip goes toe-to-toe with conservative voice Phil Williams over one of the most explosive questions in the country right now. Can immigration agents really stop and detain people just for looking scared? Or for the color of their skin? A congressman comes swinging, Cornel West drops some serious wisdom, and a legal analyst reveals a Supreme Court decision that even she couldn't believe went through. Trust me, you're going to want to stick around all the way to the finish, because the strongest moment doesn't hit until the panel starts breaking down what the courts actually just allowed. And do me a quick favor while you're here. Drop a comment and tell me where in the world you're tuning in from. I genuinely love seeing how far this community reaches. Alright, enough from me, let's get into it.
Perhaps you look panicked when you see a Border Patrol agent. Perhaps you look scared. Perhaps your demeanor changes. Perhaps you're gripping the steering wheel so tightly that I can see the whites of your knuckles. There's a myriad of factors that we would look at to develop articulable facts for reasonable suspicion.
So if you're scared, apparently that is, according to him, reason for them to arrest, detain, whatever. I mean, what do you think when you hear that?
Well, you have to add in the fact that many of these ICE agents are masked. They're plain clothes, they're unidentified, and they're violent. So yes, people are going to be scared because you have these unidentified masked agents who are screaming and violent and using excessive force a lot. So naturally, you're going to be scared. And we're seeing it all over the country. We're seeing it here in New York, where an ICE agent shoved a woman to the ground who was lamenting the fact that her husband had been taken. By the way, both of them were here with an asylum application ongoing, so that is a lawful pathway to get here. He was originally suspended and then was reinstated for some undetermined reason. This is going on all over the country. It is excessive, and the American people recognize that we can have a robust immigration enforcement system without this kind of violence.
That's absolute
and
crap.
Without
I'm going to jump in on that and say
police,
that's absolutely not true.
Mafioso.
You just criminalized the law enforcement. You just pretended there for a moment that for some reason the law enforcement is the only one who's masked and violent. The protesters are showing up and blocking ICE vehicles and raining bricks down on their roof and wearing masks themselves and being thugs to the media for that case. I mean, why aren't we caring about the media who are being attacked? The reality is, the boots on the ground, the troops, the boots on the ground, the troops, the law enforcement, they are the ones who deserve deference in this, not the protesters. And I think what the American people are really sick of is the idea that Antifa and thugs and people who want to protest the police and paid agitators who come from out of state, they can show up and do whatever they want, and that people will go on the air and say, you know, the law enforcement really needs to calm down. No, how about this? Protesters stop showing up with masks on. Protesters stop showing up and attacking.
We just saw a video where they were doing nothing.
Do protesters need to not be masked, but ICE agents can be masked?
Well, ICE agents have to be masked because they're being
ICE agents do not have to be masked.
They're not being
ICE agents do not have
to protect their safety.
Hold on a second. There are ICE agents. I watch a lot of these videos, okay? There are some that are masked and some that are not. So clearly, even within the same group of ICE agents that are conducting the same operation, some choose to go masked and some don't. They don't have to be masked.
You have to understand something about the Bovino clip that opens this, because it tells you exactly how this whole enforcement machine wants to operate. Greg Bovino sat there and calmly listed the signs of, quote, reasonable suspicion, and one of the things he named was you looking scared, gripping your steering wheel too tight, your demeanor changing. He called that developing articulable facts for reasonable suspicion. And I need you to sit with how backwards that is. Being afraid is now evidence against you? That is the logic of a system that has decided the outcome first first and is reverse engineering the justification. And this is where the congressman lands the point that Bovino never saw coming. He pointed out that these agents are often masked, unidentified, and he said you have these unidentified masked agents who are screaming and violent and using excessive force. So of course people are scared. You cannot manufacture fear with masked men rushing at citizens and then turn around and use that fear as your legal excuse to detain them. That's not law enforcement. That's a trap with a badge on it. Then the conservative on the panel, Phil Williams, tries to flip the whole frame. He says the boots on the ground, the law enforcement, they are the ones who deserve deference, not the protesters. And here's what people don't realize about that word deference. Deference is exactly what the courts have been giving. That's not the problem. The problem is deference without limits becomes permission, and permission without accountability becomes the thing every free society is supposed to guard against. But the moment that made me sit up was Abby Phillip cutting straight through the spin. Phil claims agents have to be masked because they're being docked, and Abby just says it flat. ICE agents do not have to be masked. They're not being docked. And she's right, because she then points out something you can verify with your own eyes in these videos. Within the same operation, some agents mask and some don't. That single observation collapses the entire have-to argument. It was never a requirement. It was always a choice.
But my question's a lot simpler. Is it okay for protesters to be masked if ICE agents are masked? Is it?
Is it okay for protesters to be
Yeah.
masked? If they want to wear masks, it's fine, but why are we complaining about the police? That's my point.
Well, we're
Because we're in a
complaining about them
democracy.
being masked.
My point
Listen,
is,
We don't have secret
if there are
policing.
apps that are being created, Abby, and that's the thing, there are apps that are being created that are the sole purpose is to dox ICE agents. And there are people showing up at their houses, and there are families
Listen,
being threatened. Why would we
I think
not?
all of that is terrible.
Do
But
you know
but
this for a
wanna-
fact? Because
I do
keep
know this for a
hearing
fact.
this.
I do
have
know
not
this for a
seen
fact.
ICE. They
you're
keep
ignoring the
talking
facts.
about 1,000% upswing and all this stuff. I haven't seen examples.
We just
of
had
that.
shootings in Dallas and Alvarado, Texas at ICE facilities. You remember
Absolutely.
that, right? That
And
was actually people
I
died.
was very quick to condemn that. That's unacceptable, and those people should.
that's a clear example of what we're talking
there
about.
have been attacks on ICE facilities.
There have.
It's important to note that. But I mean, what we were talking about before we got to this point was about their interaction in these stops, right? And the question actually to Bovino was about whether they were profiling people, whether they were just looking at people and saying, oh, you look Mexican, I'm going to stop. You look Mexican and you're scared. I'm going to stop you. And I think that's the question that a lot of people are wondering right now is that where we are as a country where you can just stop, not only stop people, but detain them, take away their liberty for any period of time just because of the way that they look?
No, we have enough evidence, though, brother, that there has been racial profiling, especially for precious Latino brothers and sisters who are legal citizens. That's the kind of terror that's unwarranted, and we've got to be concerned about the arbitrary use of power, especially from it when it's above. Now, we're not talking about demonizing any police or demonizing ICE. Now, I ran for president and I was trying to abolish ICE because I thought, in fact, that we ought to be able to relate to each other in such a way that we could talk about the rights and liberties of law enforcement, rights and liberties of citizens, because that's the only way you're going to have some mechanisms of accountability to keep what's left of the democracy alive. If we're dismissing arbitrary power from one camp and the other camp is only concerned about their camp, then you're not going to have any public life whatsoever.
Watch how simple Abby's question is, because the simplicity is the weapon here. She asks, is it okay for protesters to be masked if ICE agents are masked? And you can feel the whole conversation tilt, because there is no clean answer that doesn't expose the double standard. If masks are fine for the people with the power to detain you, why exactly are they a scandal for the people with no power at all? That's the part that blows my mind. The outrage only ever flows in one direction. And instead of answering, Phil Williams pivots. He goes to the app. He says there are apps being created for the sole purpose of doxing ICE agents, families being threatened, people showing up at houses. And look, if that's happening, it's wrong. Full stop. Nobody should be intimidated at their home. But notice the move. He can't defend the masking double standard, so he changes the subject to a completely different threat. That's not winning the argument. That's fleeing it. Then Cornel West steps in and lifts the entire thing to where it actually belongs. He says, we have enough evidence that there has been racial profiling, especially for precious Latino brothers and sisters who are legal citizens. And here's what I want you to catch. that. He's not talking about undocumented anyone. He's talking about citizens. Legal citizens being profiled for how they look. That is the exact scenario the country tells itself could never happen here. And then Cornel gives the line that should outlast this entire news cycle. He says we've got to be concerned about the arbitrary use of power, especially from when it's above. Let me break down why that matters. History has a very consistent lesson on this. The Palmer raids back around 1919 and 1920 rounded up thousands of people on suspicion, on association, on how they seemed rather than what they did, and America later looked back on that as a stain, not a model. Cornel is warning us we are standing at the same doorway again and pretending the door doesn't exist.
Can you
Now, of course, I
talk
didn't win
to
in
us,
the
Ellie,
election, so,
about some
you
of
know,
these cases that are coming up where these judges are going to be deciding
Yeah.
some of these issues, the use of force, who they're stopping, the arbitrary nature of it? I mean, there's a case where some families were literally picked up in a park in Chicago, a public park in Chicago.
To Dr. West's point, there was a Supreme Court opinion 3-4 weeks ago where the Supreme Court essentially said it's okay to profile, right? ICE agents in California were stopping people, not disputed, explicitly on the basis of whether they appeared to be from another country based on their skin color, if they were speaking another language, where they were, car wash, Home Depot, that kind of thing. I thought, no way the Supreme Court's going to approve this. And the Supreme Court, it was the usual 6-3 split, said, that's okay, that's permissible, at least for the time being. I mean,
That's where the court is wrong.
well, I was right, but I mean,
And
in
judges-
criminal
and
context,
judges-
you could never do that. ICE,
right,
you know, in
right,
immigration,
right,
there's broader
right.
leeway, but that's where we are. That's the law. at the moment.
That's true.
If I
That's true.
remember correctly, Justice Kavanaugh in that in his writings on that case basically said, well, you know, when American citizens are detained, it's briefly just to question them. We know for a fact that that's not how it's gone for many American citizens, including some who have sued.
Yeah, and look, we take any detention, even a brief detention, that's an infringement on someone's freedom of movement and Fourth Amendment rights and others. And also, those brief detentions then lead to questioning, which then lead to sometimes more long-term detention. So very serious, very high stakes. I mean, Dan, you're a lawyer too. I mean, I was shocked by that opinion.
Here is the part nobody wants to say out loud, and Emily just says it. She lays out that agents in California were stopping people, and she's careful with the words, not disputed, explicitly on the basis of whether they appeared to be from another country based on their skin color. Read that again, not disputed. This isn't a liberal talking point somebody is spinning. This is the established, uncontested fact of what happened. And a lawyer sitting on that panel tells you she genuinely thought, no way the Supreme Court is going to approve this. And then it did. Emily describes the usual 6-3 split, saying that's okay, that's permissible. And you can hear the disbelief in her own voice, because she came in assuming the guardrails would hold, and they didn't. That's the moment that should scare everybody watching, regardless of what side you're on, because a guardrail only matters when the car is actually heading for the edge. This was the test, and the answer we got back was, for now, go ahead. The detail that truly gets me is the Kavanaugh reasoning. The idea that when citizens get detained, it's brief, it's just to ask a few questions, no harm done. And Abby's panel dismantles it instantly by noting we know for a fact that's not how it's gone for many American citizens, including some who have already sued. A brief detention is still your freedom taken from you, and brief stops turn into questioning, and questioning turns into longer detention. There is no such thing as a small violation of a right, because once you accept the small one, you've already handed over the principle that would have stopped the large one. That's why I don't think this is really a story about immigration at all. It's a story about whether the way you look can cost you your liberty on an American street. And if you supported handing that power over because you assumed it would only ever point at someone else, understand this. Power pointed at your neighbor today is power that knows your address for tomorrow. The whole point of rights is that they don't check your paperwork first. So what do you guys think of this? Leave your thoughts down in the comments. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.